Today, I put my Friedman ASC12 up against the Qsc K12. Let's see which one of these products you should put your faith into when dialing in your guitar tone. You're probably asking, why are you doing a shootout between these two products? They're a little bit apples and oranges. I agree with you on that, but they do sit in the same fruit bowl. People utilize them for the same reasons. Whether or not they were made to be utilized that way doesn't matter, because people, regardless of that, are going to use them for the same reasons. In other words, to dial in their tone, to represent their tone, to project their tone of their digital platform, whether it's a Helix, an XFX, or a Kemper, or whatever. You need something to run your digital platform through to present your sound and to dial it in with. So today I'm gonna find out which one represents guitar tone the best, which one's more versatile, which one basically just sounds the best, and actually which one's more transparent, so that you don't have to add all these sonic ingredients to your tone to shape it so that it sounds good through the product. It should represent your tone transparently, so that you don't have to really add a bunch of stuff to it to make up for what these speakers are giving you too much of or taking away from your tone. Alright, so let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is give you my first impressions. I'm going to do a couple of riffs here and just give you my first impressions of what I think. I'm going to start with the Friedman. Now I'm going to go through the Qsc K12. Now I'm going to do a test with a clean tone through the Friedman ASC12. Now I'm going to run a test with a clean tone through the Qsc K12. Okay, here's my initial thoughts. I felt with the Friedman, it was more transparent than the QSC. I'm very familiar with my recorded tone because I've been in the studio a lot lately recording new songs for my band Qsc. And it's very, very close to my recorded tone. In fact, I would probably say it's about 95% close to it. The QSC on the transparency note, it sounds like there's a blanket in front of it. Not a really thick blanket, but a blanket nonetheless. I felt like there were frequencies that weren't really coming out, and it had a round edge to it. You know, it was like rounded off, where the Friedman, the pick attack and the bite on the strings, especially with these gravity picks that I use, I want to hear how the unpolished edge of this pick scrapes the string and bites into it. And I heard it perfectly on the Friedman, and I did not hear it at all on the Qsc K12. So there are two huge things right there. The other thing that I noticed too was the Friedman had a ton of punch to it, and you can have too much punch, almost to the point where the punch overwhelms the note and you don't hear it, and you lose some articulation and some note separation there. But with the Friedman, it's balanced perfectly. You have this nice scrapey pick attack, you know, that crispy kind of nice bite that you get with the distorted tone, that you can hear the pick attack, you can hear the notes accentuated, the things that we love about playing metal, the djenty kind of super heavy stuff, but it's backed up with this nice kind of force behind it. And it's a physical thing. You can actually feel it coming from the cab. Whereas with the QSC, it wasn't very punchy at all. In fact, if I had one word to describe it, I would say dull. And now here's the thing, I'm not saying derogatory things, so don't take this as a derogatory statement. I'm just saying between the two, the Friedman has everything I've ever looked for in a cab and an FR situation, where the QSC, I think it sounds good, but it doesn't represent all of the things that I want to get out of my guitar tone. Okay, so now I'm going to play some drop-tuned type riffs through these and see how they handle the lower frequencies. We're going to start off with the Friedman ASC12. Now for the Qsc K12. Okay, again, the Friedman, in my opinion, wins. It represented my tone properly. When I'm doing drop tune type riffs, I want something super punchy and super articulate, and I want to feel that fullness. That's the reason why I like the drop tune riffs, because that's what you get out of that. You want something that's got a nice bark to it, and it represented all of that stuff perfectly. Not only did it represent it, but it supported it. I didn't feel like I had to play harder to get it to respond to what I was doing. It was just lockstep with everything that I wanted. Well, with the QSC, it felt like someone kind of pulled back on the throttle a little bit, it just didn't have the juice. And I got these set, volume-wise, very close to each other, and it just doesn't have that fullness, and it doesn't have that punch, and it doesn't have that pick attack and all the things that I mentioned before. On the drop tune stuff, you want more of that so that your notes stand out and people can articulate what you're playing. And you need a cab that's going to represent that. And the Friedman does it 100%. The QSC, about 70%. So far in this shootout, in my opinion, the Friedman's really winning on everything. Okay, the next thing I'm going to test on these products is size of sound. I want to hear the sonic footprint that they put out. And my goal here is to see if one of them actually sounds bigger than the other. And just so you know, I have the Friedman on the floor and the Qsc up on a stand because some people told me, well, if you want to represent the Qsc properly, put it up on a stand. So it's elevated. It's 3 feet off the ground. Just so everybody understands, I'm trying to be as fair as I can about this shootout. I'm putting each product in the position that it's meant to be displayed in and perform in. Okay, so here we go with size of sound with the Friedman ASC12 first. That sounded freaking huge. Now I'm going to see how big that same riff sounds through the Qsc K12. Okay, that sounded really good. I mean, the Qsc sounded good, but it didn't sound as big. I was looking for size here, and the tone was decent. It wasn't as good as the Friedman, but I was more focused on the size of sound, like the sonic shockwave that was coming out of these different speakers. And once again, the Friedman absolutely spanked the Qsc. It was literally no contest at all. It literally sounds about 5 times bigger. I wish you could be in the same room with me so that you can hear the difference, because when you're in here, I mean, it's like so obvious. So I'm hoping the mic that I'm using really captures that for you, but I guess you'll have to take my word for it at this point, or go to a store and try these out yourself if you get a chance, side by side, and you'll definitely see what I'm talking about. Okay, so now I'm going to compare them side by side with cleans and just see how well they represent just the clean tones by themselves. Okay, now I'm going to run that same passage through the Qsc K12. Okay, I think both products represented the clean tones very well. But my favorite out of the two is still the Friedman ASC12. The reason why is because it let all of the frequencies through, and I didn't get that roundness that I don't really care for with guitar tone, where the Qsc definitely had a roundness to it. Now, the thing is I think that there's one of the biggest differences between the two is what they're made out of. I mean, the Qsc has a plastic, casing, and the Friedman is Baltic birch. And I got to tell you, I can hear the plastic. I can hear the plastic in the Qsc. That's where you're getting that roundness as opposed to the tight warmth that you get out of a Baltic birch cab like the Friedman ASC12. In another one of my videos, I actually explained a lot of the differences between those two. It's a video titled How to Choose the Right FR for You. And I talked about the differences in how cabs are made. I'm still a huge believer in wooden cabs, wooden speaker enclosures. They always sound better. There's just something artificial sounding about any speaker cab that is a poly enclosure as opposed to wood. I can't get over it. I can't get around it. It's something that I just can't not hear. It's always there. So with the QSC, as much of a good product it is, and I'm certainly not bashing it and saying it's not a good product. It is a very good product. Would I buy it over a Friedman? No. It doesn't mean that the QSC is not a good product though. It just means that the Friedman's better. You know, a couple of years ago I was watching Generation Iron. It's a bodybuilding documentary on Netflix. And one of the bodybuilders came up, Kai Green, and he stood on stage and he looked great. I mean, the guy's a monster. He's in super good shape and he's shredded and ripped and everything. And he started posing and doing his thing. And you know, I mean, it's like, how do you not think that that guy is in awesome shape and he should win the contest? Well, a couple minutes later, Phil Heath came out and stood right next to him and did the same poses as him. And suddenly, Kai Green, as great as he looked, you could see the difference between him and Phil Heath just looked better. It doesn't diminish anything that Kai Green did and how hard he worked on what he achieved, but I mean, Phil Heath was the clear winner. I mean, it was obvious. And that's kind of what I'm looking at here. I'm looking at two great products, but there has to be a winner. And the winner, in my humble opinion, is the Friedman ASC12. If you're looking for something that's going to represent your guitar tone the best between these two products, it's clearly the Friedman. I mean, I've put the QSC through its paces. I set it up. I dialed it in to make it sound as good as it could possibly sound. And it put out a great effort, and it does sound great. But next to the Friedman, you can hear all of the things that the QSC falls short on. Compared to the Friedman, the QSC falls short in these categories. It falls short on size of sound. The Friedman was clearly bigger sounding. The QSC compared to the Friedman also falls short in transparency. It's not as transparent as the Friedman. And I also think it falls short on value because there's a $100 difference between them. The QSC is $7.99, the Friedman is $8.99, and for the $100 difference, I would definitely go for the Friedman 8 days a week. I mean, it's not even a thought. It's the best $100 you'll ever spend. I mean, it's negligible at that point because I think the Friedman is probably $400 better than the QSC. So $100 more for that product is a deal. Okay, I'm going to score these two products based on these topics right here. On transparency, I'm going to give the Friedman a 9.5. Once again, I've owned it for a while. I know how close it is to my direct recorded tone, and it's 95% there. So I think 9.5 is a very good number and a fair number for that. With the QSC, I'd give it a 7. Like I said, there was a blanket over it, and it sounded really round, and it pulled a lot of the things out of my guitar tone that I like hearing and that I expect to hear. Size of sound, Friedman all day long. I'm going to score the Friedman a 10. The sonic shockwave that comes out of that cab is insane, and I have yet to run into a cab that actually feels as loud as it sounds. The QSC, I'd give it a 6. You could hear it very well. I mean, it definitely can get loud and project the sound. But once again, it didn't have any balls. It didn't have any fullness to it. And I was missing that sonic shockwave that I'm used to hearing now. And I could hear it better than I could feel it. As far as headroom goes, I'm going to score the Friedman a 10. I'm going to score the QSC a 6. The reason why is everything that I love about my tone through the Friedman at lower volumes is represented perfectly at a higher volume. When I turned it up, I didn't hear a bunch of frequencies start to come at me that I didn't like, and it hurt my ears. It sounded exactly the same on a lower volume than it did on a higher volume. It didn't flub out on me. The clarity was still there, and there was no annoying frequencies at all. It sounded ridiculous. And if you ever want to shake the walls in your house, crank a Friedman. As far as the QSC goes, I could hear it. I could definitely hear it, and it kept up with the volume. But once again, it just didn't have any balls, even at higher volumes. It just didn't have them. It just sounded louder, but it didn't feel louder. And the clarity, as far as that goes, I felt it was decent. You know, it was decent, but you still have a blanket over it, and you just have something that's louder behind that blanket. So that's kind of how I heard it anyways. Now, as far as the cleans go, I'll give the Friedman a 10. I think it represented the cleans beautifully. They were warm, they were full, they had this really nice lush kind of feel to them, and there was no pointy frequencies. On the QSC, I'd give it a 7, and the reason why I do that is because it rounded everything off. So all of my clean tones, the nice, lush, kind of shimmery accents that I dialed in on my clean tones weren't there. It just was like a duller version. So that's why I give it a 7. As far as value goes between the two, there's a price difference. So the Friedman is $8.99 and the QSC is $7.99. The Friedman's every bit worth the $100 more though. The Friedman completely wins in the value department. I'd give it a 10, and I would give the QSC a 7 in value. It does have more ins and outs on it because it's really made for FOH or a monitor wedge kind of situation, so I get that. But once again, I'm doing this comparison because people are utilizing these to dial in guitar tone and using it for a reference for a monitor or even a cab kind of situation. And I'm trying to show you the difference between the two. Now the QSC is $100 cheaper at $7.99. That said, I don't think it's built as well because once again you have a poly enclosure compared to the Friedman's Baltic birch enclosure, and I think the Friedman just, for all of the dollars that they're asking you for, they're giving you so much. I mean, they're giving you a better built product, better represents your tone. The sonic footprint is huge, and you can count on it. I mean, you can count on it to be 100% right. Every time you plug into it, whatever you dial in, it's not lying to you. There's so much honesty coming out of this cab. It gives you an opportunity to accept full responsibility for your tone. So now there's no guesswork anymore. You can dial in your tone, and you know that if it sounds good through that, it is good. Where the QSC, I mean, once again, it's a great product. I'm not disparaging the product at all. But when you compare it to the Friedman ASC12, value-wise, I don't think it's there. I really don't. Because of the roundness, because of a smaller sonic footprint, because of the poly enclosure, and the fact that it does have a little bit of a blanket over it, and you have to dial things in to accommodate for that, I just think you're better off spending $100 more on the Friedman and knowing full well that it's going to sound sick. And what's really good too is that you can park your Friedman next to any of your friends' 4x12 cabs, and it'll eat those things alive every time. It'll always sound better and bigger. And that's the other thing I really love about that cab. Now once again, I know that these are different products. I know the Qsc K12 is made for a PA or a monitor type situation, and the Friedman ASC12 is strictly a guitar cab. I'm doing this review and this shootout between the two based on the fact that a lot of guys I know use the Qsc for a guitar cab. I wanted to see how it stacked up against the ASC12 when it was utilized in that way. Clearly, the Friedman is better for guitar, and the Qsc is better for an all-around representation of a full band mix. But if you're going to dial in your guitar tone and you're going to use something for a cab on stage, in your living room, when you're just practicing or whatnot, the Friedman's clearly a better way to go. The caveat to all of this, though, is if you own a Qsc system, and you use that for your PA for your particular band or one-man show or kind of thing that you kind of do, and that's what you run through all the time when you perform out, don't waste your money on the Friedman cab, because if the QSC is what's representing your tone everywhere you go, then dial it in and make it sound good for that, and you'll be happy. A friend of mine, Dave, uses both. He uses the Friedman for his guitar and the QSC to mix his vocals and other instruments in, so he can hear everything, and he gets the best of both worlds when he performs, and I think that's a great option as well. I'll say this again, just so that people don't misconstrue what I'm trying to do here. The QSC is a great product. It really is. And I'm not saying anything derogatory about it at all with any of my comments when I'm comparing it to the Friedman product. All I'm saying is, if you're going to dial in your guitar tone and use it for representing your guitar that you play through a digital platform, I think that the Friedman's a better bet for you. Well, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I'd like to get your thoughts on these two products as well, whether you've owned them yourself or what you think of what you heard in this video. Just so you know, some of the riffs that I played in this video are from a new song that my band Qsc just released. The song is called Eternal Deception. I'm going to post some links below where you can purchase the song for just $1. You know, iTunes, Google Play, you know, all those other places that you could buy music. I appreciate your support on that. The song turned out really well, and we're really proud of it. And don't forget to subscribe, because we got a lot of great stuff coming up. We got shootouts, we got gear reviews, we're doing some in-ear monitor tutorials, so it's going to be really cool. So I'll see you guys on the next one.